The largest portion of non-Crown-owned forests in Ontario, over 7 million hectares, belongs to private landowners. That's more forest than found in our provincial parks. Sizes range from thousands of hectares down to small woodlots. The good stewardship of these forests is a gift to us all.
When we're talking about Eastern Ontario and Southern Ontario, over 90% of the land base is in private ownership. So those individual woodlots that you see when you're driving down Highway 7 from Ottawa to Peterborough, on both sides of the roadways, that's all private land. It's all owned and managed by private landowners. But who benefits from that? It's society as a whole. All the individual people living in those regions or those watersheds are benefiting from that private landowner's commitment to doing good stewardship, doing good forest management, retaining that forest cover on their property.
Private landowners have title, meaning that in general, they can manage their land as they wish. The Crown Forest Sustainability Act does not apply to them, but fortunately, many landowners are committed to sustainably managing their forests. For over 30 years, Jerry Lee has owned 400 hectares in Lanark County. Recently retired from the Canadian Wildlife Service, he has more time for hunting and trapping, but his greatest pleasure is observing the wildlife on his property.
My vision is to basically leave it as a standing forest. I will do some logging, but when I do that logging, it'll be with the intent of either improving the stand or from a habitat perspective. There's been some work done by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry that puts values on ecosystems that are managed by private individuals. They've demonstrated there is a societal value for having somebody keep these forests intact in place.
Like Jerry, Tony Bull, president of the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, understands the value of good forest management. He does some logging when the forest needs it, but his real passion is to see the land revert back to natural habitat for the native species.
I guess what I think of our bush is it's a host to all the naturally occurring native species of flora and fauna. And we are, as very powerful interlopers on this environment, we have an obligation to make sure that those species have a home and that they can thrive. There's no doubt that from a biodiversity conservation point of view, all people of Ontario benefit. It's a public service that is provided to people by private landowners. But frankly, we get the greatest benefit from this private land, really. I mean, I'm happy to play a role in support of society at large. It'd be nice to get more recognition of it, but the problem is society at large live in cities by and large. And to them, it's either a mystery or it's invisible in their own thinking.
In some parts of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Forest, private land forests have been cared for by the same families for many generations. More often, though, private lands change hands regularly. Successive landowners may not share the same commitment to sustainability, and much good work can be lost. One option for landowners is to place their properties with a land trust. These organizations are empowered to conserve lands for up to 1,000 years. Howard Clifford, president of the Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust, bought 485 hectares in Lanark County in 1981. At the time, a third of it had been clear-cut.
Well, the question was, when you have 400 acres that have been clear-cut, what do? The ministry recommended and started planting white pine, but within a year they came back and said, Howard, it's regenerating so naturally, we recommend just letting nature do its own thing. Well, tell you the truth, I was grateful for that, because deep in my heart, I thought nature really does know best. I envision this forest 100 years from now. And can you imagine children living within 100 miles of Ottawa, coming to a place with the majesty of old growth? I mean, for my children, my grandchildren, and their children and their children, what greater legacy to leave a jewel like this untouched as much as possible by man.
Private landowners play a critical role in the sustainable management of Ontario's forests, and we all benefit from their good stewardship. But we also benefit from the community-based businesses that have been the economic and social backbone of so many towns in Ontario. They have been some of the most committed stewards of our forests.
I think of the families that have had mills for 3 and 4 and 5 generations who continue to go back and harvest the same areas, who manage to continue to be in successful business.
This is a forest that I remember being told when my Uncle Herb went away to law school. They came through here and they cut poplar logs to buy him a car that he could go to law school in. And a generation later, I came through and I cut the remainder of the poplar out, noticed it was a good stand, and we were able to plant these trees. And we'll let this grow, and when the pine comes free to grow, perhaps my children will come and take the pine out of this, and it just keeps going around and around.
They're committed because they have the rights to go back and harvest something that they manage. That means they'll build a road and they'll tree mark and they'll take care of a woodlot or a crown forest because they know in 25 years, 30 years, they get to go back again and benefit from all that management.
These local businesses are not just committed to good forest management, but also to research and education. In the 1970s, for example, Shaw Lumber, in partnership with the National Museum of Natural Sciences and the Nature Conservancy of Canada, established the Shaw Woods Nature Preserve. Since then, the Shaw Woods have become an outdoor education centre, providing programming for over 3,000 students each year.
You probably find about 1,000 salamanders underneath that. This is what we call down woody debris, and this is a very important...
Education is also a primary mandate of the Ontario Woodlot Owners Association, the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, and Forests Ontario. They are at the forefront of providing assistance to landowners, hosting workshops, and providing training and educational materials. Forests Ontario, whose mission it is to be the voice of Ontario's forests, have also taken over delivery of the Ontario government's 50 million tree planting program.